Hey, welcome back to the channel, my fellow weather junkies. I'm your host, meteorologist Greg Majeski, your personal weatherman here, bringing you weather without all that social media hype here on your Thursday, January 16th, 2025. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're tracking here for today as we're looking at a weekend invasion of Arctic air that's going to be spreading in across a lot of the country. And as we head toward early next week, we're going to see temperatures running some 30 degrees below normal in a lot of places across the country. We're going to talk about a complicated weather pattern as a result of that invasion. We really have not been able to really lock down where any potential snow is going to fall across the country, and I think that's going to continue to be an issue as we go into next week. And we're also going to be taking a look at the rest of the month to see if that cold weather is going to stay locked in here through the end of February, and also see if they're going to see any kind of relief out in Southern California where they desperately need the rainfall. Now, before we get going, first I do want to thank all the new subscribers here to the channel, and if you have not yet decided to subscribe, please do so at this time. It'd be an honor and a privilege to have you on board here as part of our family. All right, let's go ahead and take a look right now at the current snowpack. I want to start off with this first. As you can see where we got some decent snows left over from that storm just over a week ago. It really hasn't even melted off that much. Here in the south, it's melted pretty decently, but good snowpack out west. And because of the snow that's there with that Arctic air coming down, that's going to kind of prevent it from modifying all that much. We'll get a little bit of snow melt here the next day or so because it's going to be briefly milder, but I don't think it's going to get rid of all this, and that's going to be a little bit of a factor as that cold air moves in for next week. Now, satellite imagery looking like this. We do have some snows across the Great Lakes, a little bit of the lake effect going on, and some snows going in through Michigan up into New York. Not exactly sure what this is. This blow up here. It's not thunderstorms, and honestly, I get it might be some of the cold air being reflected off some of the cloud tops up there, but this is not any real big precipitation right now. And it's still quiet out here on the west coast right here, big ridge out here, so no relief for the Southern California, although the winds have let up just a little bit, so allowing the firefighters to get a little bit of upper hand on that just a little bit right now with the dry conditions continuing. So I don't see any wind advisories out there for today. That's the good news. Still got red flag warnings in the area. Obviously, we got some winter weather advisories here, winter storm warnings there across portions of the Appalachians in West Virginia for today, but the bulk of the country is looking pretty quiet here for today. Looking at our current surface map, again, here's our snows right there. A little bit of rain down across the south into Florida. But the bulk of the country not looking bad. Briefly mild here. This is actually not bad. When you see 30 and 28 degree temperatures in Minneapolis, that's a lot better than the below zero that we saw just a few days ago. So a brief warm up. That's out ahead of what's coming upstream. That's going to be coming into this weekend as the Arctic air is going to plunge down here across a big portion of the country. Let's go and take a look at some of these snows up here toward Michigan. I got a pretty good band here moving in across Detroit. Going to allow for a pretty snowy rush hour, but this could quickly move on out across into Lake Erie as that little disturbance there slides into the northeast. Now let's go ahead and look at the latest from the Storms Prediction Center as we do expect a few thunderstorms. Nothing severe right now. This is your day 2 outlook. This is going in for tomorrow and going into Saturday as we could see a few rumbles of thunder here across Mississippi, Louisiana, and into Alabama and the Florida Panhandle with that day 2 outlook. And that'll continue into your day 3 as well. So as I take a look at your day 3 here, you'll notice it'll be mostly right along the Gulf Coast. So we're talking that there across the South Georgia, South Alabama, back toward Louisiana, and a big chunk of Florida may see some rumbles of thunder. And along with that, you're probably going to see some brief heavy rains as well. That's where our day 3 outlook for heavy rain is throwing here a marginal risk for some isolated flooding there, just across extreme South Georgia and a big chunk of the Florida Panhandle there, seeing some heavy rains as we go in towards your day 3. So that's going into this upcoming weekend. Now, as far as our hazards outlook, boy, this thing is updated here, and I expected it would do so, but look at how much of the country is expecting this extreme cold here across a big chunk of the nation, man. We're talking quite a bit of it here as we go in through the next 3 to 7 days. And once again, seeing this is a little concerning as we're seeing high winds expected once again back here into California here on the outlook as well. So that's something obviously that could be an inhibitor for them to fight those firefighting efforts that are going on out there. So we're going to first start off by taking, as always, the high resolution model. This is our short range, very high detailed model here to kind of see what's going on here for the next 40 hours or so. So what we're going to be watching is 2 areas. You're going to watch this snow here across obviously the Great Lakes. That'll be moving on here. And then we're going to watch some moisture out here in the Pacific that's going to be tracking into Texas and then eventually going to make its way into the southeast as we go into this upcoming Saturday, okay? All right, so let's take a look at this as we go forward here in time. Again, we're watching the snows there across Pennsylvania and into West Virginia going throughout the day here on your Thursday. Obviously seeing the little upsloping going on there. That'll augment that snow totals a little bit. And seeing the rains down here across South Florida as well. But then that moisture starts to kick on in here as we go into overnight, your Thursday and into Friday. So watch what happens here as we go into our Friday, start seeing that moisture there kicking into parts of Texas. So you see it kind of firing up there just a little bit. Not that bad though here around the lunch hour here across East Texas, but it really starts cranking as we go into later in the day into Friday, as we're going to start seeing that move off toward the east. We're also going to see an Arctic front start to make its presence felt down here. This is the cold air coming on down with this, and you see the rains expanding there as that moves off toward the east. This is 9 o'clock on your Friday, and as we take this all the way out to about midnight, this is pushed off toward the east. Again, we're going to see the just plain old rain in here right now. The Arctic front is sitting back here, and it'll catch up with that, and then it'll sweep all across the southeast and kick that precipitation out as we go through the weekend, and that cold air really settles in as we head into early next week. Let's look at the jet stream here. We're looking at the European model here, as we're going to be looking over the next, we'll focus first 7 days, and then we'll kind of look out and see what the extrapolation is beyond that. So, all right, so here's our energy kicking on out here for this upcoming weekend. This is that little dip here in the subtropical here. That's going to be, and then we got the big dive of the jet stream. These things are going to sync up here. These two are going to what we call phase together and bring in that real cold Arctic air as we go into next week. So watch what happens here as we go through time. They really come together here. And we got the polar vortex. You've heard that term thrown out a lot sitting right there. And we're spilling some polar air coming right in across the country going into Sunday, and that'll continue into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. What's difficult with this kind of setup is when you get this kind of polar air to drop down into the United States, and that jet stream gets very strong going into Monday, is setting up where you're going to see any kind of weather precipitation. Where are those little embedded shortwave energies going to set up? The models do a very poor job with this. So we were looking at the potential for some snows breaking out here across areas of the deep south with this setup. And right now, the American GFS and the European models have kind of backed off this a little bit. The European's still showing a little bit of it, but even I think that's trending downward here. So again, it was a complicated setup to get that to develop. And this big trough is going to stay into place here as we go in through Tuesday. Tuesday and Wednesday, probably your coldest mornings here across the eastern third of the United States. We're going to see a lot of areas here below zero and into the areas in the Midwest there, especially where that snowpack's still sitting on the ground. But it looks like the trend stays cold here. We pretty much stay very cold. Here's another whole system. Another thing that's happened with these jet streams is that they're bending backwards, okay? They're not going in a negative tilt position, so you're not really getting any big storm systems to develop, okay? You got to have it kind of tilting the other direction to get any significant real major winter weather events, and we're not seeing that. But boy, that big trough just stays in place, doesn't it? It just stays in place right through the end of the month. So the way it's looking right now is the cold pattern's going to stay locked in. It appears right through. We get ready to turn the calendar into February. All right, let's go ahead and break this down. Let's go ahead and look at the precipitation here. We already talked about the short term, so let's go ahead and talk about this precipitation coming down. Here is that Arctic front. You see it sweeping there toward the south here as we go into this weekend. So this blue line, we call that our freezing line in here. Oops, let me clear that out again. Sorry about that. You see that kind of diving down here. This is the cold Arctic air settling on in. Here's our rain across the southeast that we showed you there on the high-res model. And this is going to dive straight on down to the south. So here it comes, boom. And look at that. This is 480 heights. That's extremely cold. Okay, that's our polar vortex making its presence felt there, diving down the cold air across the areas of the deep south. There's a little bit of energy back here that's showing up here on the model that's going to try to track some snow this way. But the trend here on the models here lately has been for this to greatly diminish. But for right now, the European still brings this snow in the deep south here across the Texas Gulf Coast, Houston, maybe getting snow close to New Orleans. That's definitely historic, to say the least, if we see that going overnight Monday and into Tuesday. But then it flattens out very quickly as it just kind of goes across the Florida Panhandle and kind of goes on out to sea. I don't know if this is going to hold true on the next model run. The trend has been going downward here. Again, it's kind of just the Arctic air kind of bumping into the mild air down to the south there out of the Gulf that's causing that setup there. We'll see if that holds true or not. I think as we get closer to the weekend, we'll be able to see if that little winter event's going to come to pass or not. And then as we go into our 7th-day outlook, we'll take this all the way out to 180. We'll watch for another system here to develop here across the middle of the country as another piece of energy comes down. Now, again, with this one, there's some differences between the European and the GFS model. The GFS model is a little bit further off toward the east, but we're going to stay with the European on this one. That's my preferred model of choice here. as that will kick off little snows there across the Midwest and going into the Northeast as we go in toward Friday of next week. Now, keep in mind now, we're getting days 8 and 9, so anything beyond this is we're looking at tendencies. We're looking at forecast trends at this point. So going all the way out here on the 360 outlook here, again, we got that moving on through. It's definitely turning wetter across the southeast. It's been kind of dry for a little while, so we'll see a little more wet weather across the south. But going in toward the following weekend, you notice here quite prominently this freezing line that is very, very cold across a big part of the country going into even the following weekend. So staying cold there. And again, no big storm systems really developed because of the configuration of the jet stream. Here's another breakdown. Here's another part of the polar vortex. Once again, rotating down. We've had a very weak polar vortex. When it's weak like this and we don't have a strong polar jet in place, it's not locked in. So it just keeps wobbling around in big circles. And when it does so, it brings down these chunks of cold air coming down across the United States. So that trend continues. And I'll be honest with you, and it looks like as we hit toward the 30th, it's heading over across the Great Lakes here. I see this probably continuing straight into February. I don't see anything that's going to cause this to change right now. I think this cold pattern will continue into the month of February the way it's looking right now. And then at the end of this run, looks like we got a little snowstorm here across the middle of the country to watch as we wrap up the month. Again, this is extrapolation when you're talking 360 hours out. But the cold pattern, that definitely is the tendency for right now. So let's go ahead and talk about the precipitation here. We'll look at for the next 72 hours. We'll take this out for the next 3 days first. And again, we'll see that helpful rain here across the south. We could use a little rain here. Looks like most areas, half inch, maybe an inch in some spots, but mostly about a half inch there. Of course, this is a snow path here, and this is snow across the Great Lakes. Let's go take this on out to 10 days. We'll go out to 240. I usually don't go beyond 10 days for precipitation lookout. And you definitely notice a little wetter across the southeast. So definitely wetter conditions here across the southeast. Unfortunately, no rain out in Southern California. That's a bad thing. And the Great Lakes showing feet of snow once again, firing up with that cold, cold Arctic air mass that's coming across the Great Lakes. Now I'm going to take this out to 360 just to see. We were kind of watching to see if there's any trend for any rain out in Southern California. And the last 2 days it was showing stuff. Now it's not showing anything. And we're kind of looking for trends here. And unfortunately, I don't see anything trending that's going to cause us to get any kind of real rain across Southern California, as long as that big ridge stays in place and the polar vortex keeps behaving the way it's behaving too. That's also a contributing factor. All right, let's go and talk about snowfall here for you snow lovers out there. We're going to talk about the next 72 hours here. Take it out here. Looks like the Great Lakes, so we're talking about areas there into the Pennsylvania, looking at West Virginia. Again, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches, nothing too bad. A little bit out here in the Intermountain region, but nothing too heavy. Then we're going to talk about this next part, which is the southern part of this, whether this happens or not. So it's this snow down here. Don't know if this is going to happen. This is still a bit of a question mark for me. It has consistently backing off on the amounts on this. So maybe a light dusting across Louisiana, but getting cumulative snows in Houston, Texas, and into near New Orleans, that's something you just don't see. It's definitely a little bit unprecedented, but I'm not convinced whether that's going to happen going Monday into Tuesday, and this will spread off to the south. Then the next question for next week is the storm track for the next storm system. Right now, the Europeans is developing it back here toward the west. The GFS is a little bit further to the east. So question marks on that next storm system Friday and Saturday going from the 24th and into the 25th to see if that's going to come to fruition or not. So we'll stop that at 240 right there on the snow chances. So the Great Lakes are definitely lighting up like a Christmas tree once again. A lot of areas there, especially across New York, Pennsylvania area, around the Buffalo area. You know you're going to be measuring in feet once again as that lake effect machine is going to be kicking into overtime. All right, let's talk about the temperatures. Again, we're getting a slight break, and I do mean a slight break here as we go look at here late in the day here on your Friday, especially across the high plains. A little bit below average here across the southeast, but nothing too bad. But it's what's coming at us the next week that's going to have everybody's eye on this. So going into Friday weekend, we continue with a little bit of above normal there across the middle of the country. But watch what happens as we go through the weekend. Here comes this Arctic plunge coming on down. Here comes going into Sunday. Really coming on. This deep purple here, we're talking 30 plus degrees below normal there, and that's going to be shifting on here toward the east as we go in toward your Monday and Tuesday of next week. So watch that move on in as we'll see a lot of areas there in Monday. Look at that. Wow. a big part of the country. Up here, the high plains, the Ohio River Valley, looking at the deep south, looking across the Intermountain region. A lot of pockets of temperatures there of 30 plus degrees below average for this time of year. So very bitterly cold coming on in there. That's why the models are having such a hard time with this jet stream flow and where the snow is going to potentially fall or not fall. So it stays cold right into Tuesday. It does appear Tuesday to be the coldest morning, and then this starts to move on out, starts to modify a little bit here as we go toward the 24th. And once again, we get a little brief warm up here across the high plains, but again, that's temporary once again as we got another drop down. Remember, I showed you another piece of the polar vortex dropping down here once again, and boom, here it comes, going into the 27th and 28th, and it stays there. And it looks like we had a brief warm up here across the southeast going until the 28th and 29th. So there and across the northeast. But again, these are just like one-day warm-ups out ahead of another surge of cold air that's coming down here. And as I take this all the way out, look at that. Heading out toward the 30th, big part of the country, still looking at below normal temperatures and bitterly cold there across the areas of the Ohio River Valley, heading toward the 30th of July, getting ready to go into the 31st. So it looks like the pattern maintains the cold weather straight through the end of the month. And it looks like that'll continue to present opportunities for snow. But again, the variable here is because the jet stream is the way it's configured with that polar vortex, we're going to have a real hard time tracking down when we're going to get these snow events. Probably not till at least 3 to 5 days out. I think that's going to be the shorter window. Anything long range, it's just going to be very, very difficult because model continuity is just not there. So let's go ahead and take a look and wrap things up here, looking at your climate outlook here. See if that lines up with what we're seeing with the latest European model here. This is January 21st to the 25th. Again, bitterly cold temperatures here across the deep south, the mid-Atlantic, heading into the northeast. Obviously, with that big cold surge coming down for next week. Briefly, a little milder out here in the west. And continuing the 23rd to the 29th, pretty much near normal or below normal for a continuation for a big part of the country, except for areas here in the west and maybe South Florida as we get up to the 29th. So that's lining up pretty good with what we're seeing there on the long-range European outlook. This stays dry. Yes, this next week with that continental cold air mass in place, we're not going to get a whole lot. I'm not sure if we're going to see anything real down here other than what we're getting out ahead of the system here with above normal precipitation on it. I don't know about this right here. We'll see what happens. Depends on if that storm system gets fired up as we head toward Thursday and Friday of next week. And then it looks like we get a little bit better indication of maybe a little better chances of precipitation across the country here going in from the 23rd to the 29th, except for the Great Lakes and, of course, where they need it the most down there in Southern California. Not seeing that as well. So that's how we're looking right here for today, folks. Again, just get yourself prepared for this cold air mass coming down. This is going to go down as one of the colder Januaries we've had in some time across the United States in recent memory, that's for sure. So just make sure you got a plan and you got things ready to go. If you got a car battery that's getting close to dying on you or just having a hard time starting, you may want to go ahead and change that out now. Get ready to do the protection things for your houses, dripping pipes, and make sure you insulate exposed pipes if you have them. And make sure you have a plan to check on the elderly. They may want to be a little more timid with their heating bills and stuff, so make sure they at least have a place to stay warm and that they're taking care of themselves when this bitterly cold air moves on in heading into next week. All right, that's your update. Again, just bear with me. This is going to continue to change daily as we continue to watch this winter weather here in 2025. Again, hey, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so at this time. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted on future content. And if you like what you see, please leave me a comment, leave me a message down below. I do appreciate you guys giving me some feedback. All right, that's it for now. You guys take it easy, be good, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.